This episode of the podcast is sponsored by my book, We Stand on the Shoulders of Titans, Amnesia. Hello, once again. This time we're going to go into a little bit more of a micro type of variation of the civilizational theory, because everything we've done so far has been more broadly speaking, more broadly in the center of like an actual nation. But when we think about the actual creation of a nation, it starts with the family. There's something Confucian already described almost 2,500 years ago in the sense of the warring states of China, where he went over the details of what it actually means to be a son, a father, someone part of a family structure. There's a lot of science, especially in modernity, where we see what happens when a son doesn't have a father or a father figure. Because even if the father is physically present, there's still a lot of cases where we see that the father is just mentally absent, so he's not actually investing anything into his child, which leaves a very blank slate for the sons to just figure things out themselves. And in the past 50 years, we've kind of seen what that turns into, kind of from what Kierkegaard described as the aesthetic stage and the ethical stage, where you're going through the steps of just looking to what you are and where you want to go. And Kierkegaard was someone, a Danish philosopher, who described the whole sense of the aesthetical stage. So most boys nowadays are what you could call the aesthetical stage of existence, living purely for immediate sensation, for simulation that comes from transgression, for the fleeting power of watching something like burn. And myself included, I didn't really have any framework for ethical commitment, like no real model or individual shows what might bite me to something. I was entirely on my own with all of my decisions. Going through that, there's quite a lot of archetypes that come with this. One of them is the predator, something you hear a lot of complaints about nowadays, because these are the people that are attracted to masculinity, specifically the hierarchy, the tribal hatred, the criminal dominance, something that shows like the Godfather. You see a lot of gang violence coming up in my country, also in England, also in Scotland, purely from boys who go down the road of, I am someone that wants a partner. And how do you get a partner? By showing something that attracts women. Because predators tend to get relationships quite easily, because from what we've spoken about last week, women are attracted to a man that protects, even if it's just something that's going into the sense of domestic violence, because there's a lot of domestic violence when it comes to the predator archetype, because violence is violence and they will use it on anyone, including their partner. But an even worse one is what you can call the white knight, and these are by far the worst creatures to society. They have existed as well in the past, called the Gracculus. This is from the Roman Empire. The educated, rhetorical, devoted to their civilizational guilt narratives, utterly incapable of defending anything that stands for the future of the nation. So he confuses the cultural sophistication with strength, and correct language, protective action, and progressive credentials with masculine virtue. These are virtue signalers. They signal the virtue without actually being worth anything of the virtue. And then beyond that, you have the passive men. These are the men that internalize the shame completely. They withdraw from the field of risk entirely. They are neither performer or predator, just absent. These three archetypes are something we see in Kierkegaard's aesthetic stage. They're pursuing intensity and simulation without the anchor of ethical commitment. Going through that, I'm joined here as usual. How do you guys feel about these archetypes? Because there's more, but we're starting with this.
I mean, yeah, it's a lot to go into, but like for myself, my family background, I was raised with mum and dad, never really had any family issues. It would kind of split us apart, and that kind of remained throughout until my dad passed away. And then, my mother kind of had to, by that point, I was kind of growing up anyway, but my mother had to then take on the parenting, like from that aspect. But I always learned good values from having both parents, but I guess for myself, I became a bit wayward, and like for me, I'm not in any kind of relationship, so I maybe fall into one of those archetypes where kind of there's no family background yet, with a hope to get a family background in the future. But at the moment, I'm not like actively looking to build a family, so to speak.
What about you, Mike?
I never really thought about it this way before. I mean, I know about I know about all the studies which show like higher crime rates with families which usually single parent, often without the dad, that kind of thing. So, I mean, get it on the conceptual level, but I've never, like I said, I've never really considered it in the whole role of archetypes, like you've said.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of new ground for me.
I guess, like, for going from the past, your dad is there to kind of like for the male. I guess it depends really what side of the lineage you fall on, right? I mean, there can be some boys who are mummy's boys and some boys who are daddy's boys. You know what I mean? But most of us, the parent has a role to play either way. You know what I mean? In teaching good values to the child. So but it falls down to both parents. If both parents are not there, or if one of the parents is adjacent, or missing, then then the person's going to be raised with some kind of deficiency. Not to say that it can be as a flaw, but most people can learn to adapt from what they've got and also learn from the community around them as well. So, parenting in itself is also part of a community. It should be part of a community thing as well. Like, it shouldn't just be
Sure.
down to the
Yeah.
parents to teach good values. It should be down to the community to teach good values. And that's why like church exists and stuff like that, right? Is so that people can learn the values outside their own family unit.
That's what a country is, right? A country is just one big community where we're all paying taxes to the same system. It's the same kind of idea, but it goes much deeper. Like the female side, so the mother side, is kind of like to show the boys what a good partner is. So the masculinity part is just what you should be as a man. And the mother type, like you see that a lot of men seek a woman that is similar to their own mother, right? This is quite well documented in a lot of studies. And when it comes to this type of behavior, if you don't really know what a good female partner looks like, it also kind of directly relates to what the type of mother that you had. So imagine you have a mother that constantly works all the time. It's very likely that you're gonna search a woman that is maybe very into working, CEO, boss lady type, maybe even potentially. Someone that is always like on the grind. And you yourself is probably gonna go into the direction as well, if that's what your parents are. It's very likely that you will try to do that grind as well. The best example is South Korea. The whole country is built on the grind. So it's that type of thing. But there's more archetypes. Think about the degenerate. This is someone, imagine, either watch a lot of Disney movies, a lot of cartoons, or anime for that sense, for whoever watches that. These are more often not stories about like friendship or family or something greater than yourself, right? Like
It's often a hero's journey, isn't it?
yeah, and if you think about anime specifically, like Japan is built through the culture of the stories of the Heian period, obviously, where Genji no Monogatari and the Monogatari are very prevalent in today's society, especially through the samurai era, and also the roots of Confucianism, Buddhism, and naturally Shintoism. They have a very powerful culture, and if you look at Studio Ghibli movies, for example, they're very broad storytelling stories about something with meaning. But a degenerate, they just look at those things and they go into it. You see this quite often, people that get their quote-unquote waifu or their husbando from cartoon characters, and they get body pillows. Like, it's very similar to the Disney adult. Disney adult is someone that in their 25 to 44 visits Disney parks, gets collectibles, buys all this Disney stuff. Very immature type, despite their age, right? Like, eventually you do have to grow up, and if you're still buying all the stuff when you're way into adulthood, imagine that with children that come off kind of that partner. Because if they,
I feel very called out right now.
nah,
I'm just kidding. No, I do have a bunch of collectible Disney stuff, but that's when I went. I was like in my early 20s because I went on holiday a couple of times with some friends. Went to Florida, so went to Disney World and a few other places. I've still got a bunch of the stuff there, but that's more for the memories than anything.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm talking more about, for example, what we see nowadays online is a lot of quote unquote degenerates for who I know for a fact are definitely gooning to cartoons. Like this is very common nowadays online. What they do is they make a drawing of a certain character and they would say, oh, this character would fight ice, Spider-Man would fight ice. They would use cartoons as some kind of formalization of what masculinity actually is within those stories and try to project their own ideology onto those characters.
I've seen that, and it's like they're trying to use it to give their ideology some kind of moral authority. It's like these people are heroes. It's like, oh, Superman fights for all immigrants. Superman's an immigrant himself, and it's like
they're characters.
I mean,
they're cartoons.
Yeah,
that's the whole problem.
And it's also, but it's also like, well, like what the character represents. So it's like, well, no, Superman's American at the end of the day.
Yep.
I mean, his saying is truth, justice, in the American way. Even though all the lefties try to change it, change that constantly. But it's like, yeah, he's an immigrant in a very technical sense because he came from another planet, but he adopted American values. He was raised by American parents. By every metric that you would assign, except for birthplace, he would count as an American. So he's a representation of American values because he, like I say, raised by Midwestern adoptive parents. So you're taking the values of the local culture, which is what happened there. So trying to say, oh well, you're trying to say, oh he'd be all for immigrants. It's like not necessarily.
Let's take it a step further because what you're saying right now I agree with, but when it comes down to it, what Superman actually is a real asylum seeker. If you think about the background of the character, he is by every definition an asylum seeker. He is someone that would get through the system and would likely be accepted.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, like his own country was blown up, right? No, not many blown up, but like
his entire planet was blown up. So it's like it's not like he can go home.
Exactly, like the whole narrative
what they got to do. What they got to do? Deport.
Yeah, but like he integrated, so that means he was in an asylum. Because like in my social circle, I do have second generation Iranian children in my social circle, and they're very, very integrated, and they have a very good head on their shoulders because their father figure, who sought asylum in my country, was someone that actually showed how to be a man, and the woman they married was a Dutch woman who showed him what type of woman he should be looking for. Like that is the good combination. But when it comes to these type of men, like in sociology studies, they describe the Disney adult phenomena as people that almost signal a break from regular society or real life. And this criticism is around like arrested development, unwillingness to relinquish childhood fantasies for adult responsibilities. So career advancements, family formation, financial independence, they throw all that away to live a fantasy.
But then there's also people who still live out these fantasies even though they have got children and responsibilities, but some of them then neglect the responsibilities.
That's the thing, like they're still in their fantasy.
Well, that's even worse on a scale of things. It's like, okay, if you're someone like me, single, living by myself, it's like, okay, I've got my fantasy. It's just like, well, it's just affecting myself. But then it's worse if it's like, you've got actual responsibilities beyond yourself, because especially with kids depend on you. So if you're neglecting them, you're actively harming other people as well.
Yeah.
So it's in that case, it's much worse.
It is.
Yeah.
Like a degenerate is someone who just doesn't want to face reality, and in what you see it in Japan, right? They have a lot of otaku who just not really isolate, because hikikomori is a different archetype, but they just isolate themselves from responsibility. Like they just want to look the other way when it comes to pretty much everything and not pretend that something actually needs to be done.
I mean, I'd very much prefer to do that, but can't now that I know what's going on around the world. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like it's realizing as well that even if it's because this is one of those problems where even if you just stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not there, it will knock on your door eventually.
Yep.
Yeah,
Bill
So
always comes.
and it's like you get some of the people. I mean, I get the argument where people say like, oh, I mean, I'd rather not rock the boat because I don't want to make it harder for my kids. But if things carry on the way they are, well, it's going to be harder for the kids anyway.
Oh yeah, that's right, right.
Because society's collapsing at this on its foundations right now.
Yep.
I mean, personally, I've got nothing wrong with a little bit of degeneracy as long as you keep it to yourself. But it's getting to the point now where people are not only just shoving it in people's faces, but forcing people to participate as well.
Yeah, well, I
Which
mean,
which is
you've got
even
the
worse.
whole, I guess, LGBTQ community, I guess, but there's people within that community who flash it into people's face, even though it might, they don't want to see it. They don't mind that those people have those fantasies or whatever.
I mean,
Yeah,
the question is kind of like, when did we normalize furries? Because nowadays I just keep seeing more and more videos of people in fursuits. I'm like, these people are into bestiality. We understand this, right? Like, just because they go into cartoons, it doesn't change the fact that what they're going to is animals. Like, when did we normalize this? Because the LGBT, I can kind of be like, I kind of understand where they're coming from, but the furries, I have no idea where they're coming from. They're just straight up into animals.
It's like that and otherkin and stuff like that. I'm like, I mean, that's never appealed to me. I'm like, I just don't get it.
I don't want to get it. That's more accurate.
Fair enough. But I've heard people say, it's like, I can agree with this to a point, that when it comes to stuff like this, things like role play and first, it's like it's exploring aspects of yourself within safe environment where you're doing it where you're not actively doing the thing, so you're not putting yourself at like physical or even legal risk at times.
Let me ask a question then. Are they not abandoning their humanity?
What?
Because what they're exploring is the abandonment of their own humanity.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's they're doing it in like you say, that the whole idea of what I've heard was people are doing it in a sense where it's safe, so they're not really doing it. It's more like not exactly a thought experiment, but something something along those lines. Now, like I said, I agree with it to a point, but then I think it's also escalated to the point where there are people out there who are taking it way beyond that and using it as a replacement for reality.
Yeah.
So like say going back to just living in a fantasy there.
Yep.
We're pretty much hardwired, right, to reproduce. In any circumstance, our genes are hardwired to do that.
Yep.
What baffles me is, like, even for my own my own point of view, I've got to the age now where I really should have kids.
Biological clock is ticking
there.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Biological clock is ticking, and I should really be settling down. But I mean, my dad has, he had myself late, so he was in his 50s before he had me. So maybe that's
well, there are outliers.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you're in your 30s or whatever, you don't necessarily have to have kids. It can happen at any time,
For men, yes.
That's what I was just about to say. You caught me off guard. If you're a guy, then you've not really got a biological clock the same as women do. Obviously women hit menopause at a certain stage and they can't reproduce anymore.
Oh, but don't you know now men can't hit the menopause?
we can have a type of menopause, I think. But no, one of those ones, honestly, I guess for guys, you do want to be having kids earlier, because then I believe you can give your kids more in terms of your energy levels, and but then having kids later in life as well you could say that you've got a bit more wisdom about you, you've got a bit more life experience that you can pass on to your kid, so it's one of those ones, I guess. It's
There's
about finding
benefits
that
because
fine
it's like
balance. Yeah, but also as well, you have to look at it from a point of view of how mature is the person who is actually having a kid. Because if you've got a 50-year-old man who's not very mature and having a kid, then it doesn't matter. They're not going to pass on wisdom to that person anyway. You know what I mean, or that kid anyway. So, but at least they'll still
Yeah, but that's
reproducing
kind of what we're
themselves.
talking about, right? We're talking about the family and how these men come to be in the first place.
Yeah,
And these archetypes,
yeah,
like eventually these people will become older. The clock keeps ticking. Eventually they'll just be too old to even try something, right? Like going back to the degenerates, like what they're doing is the aesthetic stage of Kierkegaard in its most pathological form. They're seeking sensation from representation of meaning without grasping that the meaning itself is what's missing. That is the most fundamental part that you can see with like all kinds of behaviors. Like Kierkegaard made excellent descriptions of like the ethical like responsibilities of meaning and the aesthetical stages of meaning. And when it comes to the degenerate specifically, like when it comes to what we spoke about last week, so the requirement of protection, these guys won't protect. They'll just get their cardboard printouts, or they'll role play something, or they'll just never actually engage with responsibility. So even if they do somehow manage to get a woman pregnant, that family situation itself is going to be a disaster, because that child is going to be raised in the conditions, unless he gets his things together, of the entirely performance, which is very problematic. And that's what we see with a lot of people, because every single archetype spawns another archetype, right? If you think about, for example, the clown, the nihilist, what they're doing is they make a joke out of everything. Like they make a joke out of virtue, they make a joke of strength, of meaning, because acknowledging any of these values is too painful. That is the fundamental part of the joke. They're the extreme attention seeker. They're addicted to absurdity and degradation. These are people that perform self-destruction. And what they will do online, for example, is, oh, look at me, I 420 blaze it, or whatever they say. The weed, all that stuff. Like, I'm from the Netherlands, that doesn't make you look cool. It makes you look like a fool. Like, we have a word for it. It's called a junkie.
yeah.
Like, you smell. That's what you do. Like, that's about it. Like, you're not special or anything. Like, but that is the type of behavior we see from someone that is despairing in the aesthetic stage and has chosen to mock the ethical stage from Kierkegaard. They see all the rules and commitments as equally fraudulent, because what they get raised up with is that if they actually do participate in it, it's a fraud. Like, when he looks at their father, for example, he doesn't see masculinity, he sees a fraud. And it's very similar to myself. Like, when I looked at my biological father, I saw a fraud. My advantage is I had a stepfather who showed me that what actually is supposed to look like when it comes to masculinity. So, like, there was some balancing going on. But if you're only...
there is.
Go on.
I was going to say, I can add, there's something to add to that as well. I mean, it's not just with the family. I mean, that's the primary source, but you can see through like your local neighborhoods, or like smaller scale areas like the village.
Yeah.
Can show where your parents might be going wrong, because you see some people like whose parents were absolutely atrocious, horrible people, but then they grow up to be outstanding members of society. Like, they end up making a business or something, becoming quite individually wealthy. So, but they see that because basically they learn by counterexample then. So they've learned what not to do from the parents, because they can compare it to other people around from outside the family.
That's also an archetype.
So there's... What's the archetype on that one?
The uninformed. These are people who, throughout their entire life, they aren't in any of the types. They emerge from something. Like, he has no aggression to channel interpretation, no virtue to perform as a white knight, no withdrawal into passivity that comes from having learned to fear intervention. He is simply never formed at all. So imagine very bad parental examples with very good examples, but no one really showed him what to do. So what he does is he loses himself in something where he can just put all his time into. That's where I am. It's like I saw both sides, and instead of doing anything, I just decided to spend my entire life reading books, studying philosophy, going to university, like just completely isolating myself from anything. And then when I reach my 30s, suddenly I'm looking around and I see the entire country collapsing, right? Because I just looked away. I'm like, I'm just going to build my own life. I'm just going to do whatever I want because that's the only way to go forward.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's satisfactory for most people.
Yeah, but it still creates an archetype because the uninformed are the most dangerous. Because imagine, because I have seen all these archetypes in my own life, and all I had to do was be captured by one of them. So if I were to seek hierarchy, I could go into drug dealing easily.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. It's like if they're unformed, that means they can be formed.
Exactly.
That implies they can be formed into something. So, yeah, I mean, for you, well, for us three, basically, I think we were lucky we formed into something somewhat more benign.
Yeah.
Basically, if I may say so myself.
Willing to debate without being at each other's throats, that's already an accomplishment in today's society.
Well, what we do behind the scenes is nobody's business.
I'll kill you later, okay?
Yeah. Do it quickly, though. Like, I
know
like to
I know where you live. Come on.
And nobody house looks.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it is. It's sometimes like you can make something from nothing, right? But it's dependent on what you do with that.
Yeah.
Well, also what you know as well.
That too.
Yeah.
Like reading a lot helps a lot because like where my information comes from is because I didn't really have the actual vision of what it looks like. I just started reading books. And in books you can find a lot of answers because these are people that have long passed away, right? Like you can read Nietzsche and you can see within the Predators the will to power. Because that's what Nietzsche describes in the will to power. It's something that Kierkegaard never acknowledges within his works. Because he goes more into go on.
No, go finish. Go on.
He goes more into the ethical and the aesthetical stage. That was kind of
okay. Some people.
I would say as well. Even reading nonfiction is good for that because you can learn. I mean, a lot of my intake and that kind of stuff was reading a lot of nonfiction and playing a lot of video games.
Yeah, I agree with this.
But you can learn. It's like because a lot of stories are based, so like there's a kernel of reality in there. So things like the hero's journey, basic morality, and like a lot of my moral compass was done from playing a bunch of Final Fantasy games, because they were in my formative years. And a lot because I used to love playing RPGs, and the stories were good because they resonate with me. And a lot of them were basically, playing good versus evil, hero's journey. The protagonists and the villains have very set moral compasses, and you can learn a lot from that because it is based on the human spirit in a sense. If you want to get into the abstract, so you can learn a lot from that and apply it to the real world.
Well, I guess as well from TV series and science fiction and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek, you know what I mean? A lot of moral stuff is in Star Trek. And
before you go, older Star Trek, not the
older Star. Yeah, older.
You're missing something here, though, because when I described the degenerates, we made it very clear, right? This is about the family. Like you watch all this anime, you watch all these cartoons. I already said that, right? Like it's very open about how you should function in a community, as a society, as with your parents, like as a family, what it all looks like. But they are inherently blind to it because they choose to be blind. Like they can absorb all the information and then they'll just go into it because it's easier. It's easier to just get the dopamine fix afterwards.
I mean, it's not even that. It's like not even just with gooning. It's like you get a lot of people like we were talking about the other week with the people getting killed by ice.
Yeah.
And you see the anti-ice protesters looking at the exact same video, but coming up with a way that suits their own ideology and narrative.
Exactly.
Even though it goes against literally everything that you see in the video, or most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so it's to say it's not gooning's just one outlet for it. But
see on that example there, what you were saying, a lot of people obviously consume things differently, consume information differently, and pick up on information differently, you know. So some people can read a book and take a lot of information away from a book, whereas others might not be able to, you know what I mean? Like some way in their brain they're wired so that they can't take in that information
Well,
the way that the book interprets it. You know what I mean?
it's slightly different from what you're saying. I'd say because it's like, okay, everyone gets slightly different things from reading the same book or watching the same film, but it's all along a similar wavelength to a point. But what I'm talking about with these people is they seem to reject the entire book, as it were, and basically just rewrite it in or rewrite entire parts of it so it suits what they want. So it's less about getting slightly different things from it. It's more about butchering what's been seen, or what's in the content for their own like moral or political gain. But
Yeah.
it's kind of vandalism at that point.
A good example is modern. Like we've already spoken about this in all previous episodes, like music and everything. Like everything has just been diluted to the point where real messages aren't really being carried anymore, except for by like indie developers, right? Because that's the
Well, I
whole.
mean, look at Star Trek. We were
Yeah,
saying before as
yeah.
well.
Like I agree. But that is kind of like what you're heading. Like when it comes to the family, and when it comes to like masculinity and also like femininity, for that sense, like when you want to be raised properly, like you do need both sides. And one of the more dangerous ones is to get a bit more dark, so to say. You have the golem, the weaponized. And these are people who are fundamentally passive, like hollow. They lack any internal direction, but it yearns to be used. These are perfect for cults, terrorist cells, or criminal gangs.
I've been there, like very, very lost on what to do with myself. I grew out I grew out of it over time. Luckily, I never got claimed because I think I was extremely passive, but to the point where I preferred just being by myself. I guess almost like a hikikomori.
Hikikomori. That's the ghost.
Not quite there because I did venture out and doing my own thing, but I always preferred my own company. To the point. Then again, I think maybe that's because I'm autistic as well. But it's it was to the point where going what you were saying about being, some people being the unformed. I rejected a lot of outside stimuli to the point where I subconsciously remained unformed to at least up until I saw what was going on. So maybe I just developed my moral compass or my social compass later than others.
Yeah, there are a lot of late bloomers, but it's also the stories you grew up with, right? Like, for what it matters, like we are story-orientated creatures as human beings. So that means when we watch movies,
how we perceive the world, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you just think about the Bible, right? Like Bible is just a bunch of stories if you think about it. Yet billions follow it.
Yeah, and do their own.
Well, same like what it's like any religious text, like the Quran or what's the Jewish one? I forget what the Jewish one, the Torah.
Torah,
yeah. So I mean, it's a bunch of stories which lays out moral frameworks. Among other things, like there's like practical advice in there as well. So I mean, there's good stuff in them. I've only ever read the Bible. I mean, I've not even fully read the Bible, but you get. I mean, part of my moral compass is from that as well. It's not just completely from like video games and books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a somewhat varied intake, as it were. So, I mean, obviously that helped form me into what I do now. And obviously you guys have had your own similar experiences, which get you into, similar moral frameworks that I have, which is why we get on, behind the scenes. I'm kidding.
That's kind of like where I'm going with my philosophy, right? Like, if you think about civilization theory, you do have to think about the family and then think about family archetypes, like what actually gets produced from like families, because there's a huge difference in like East Asia and the West, right? And the most fundamental difference is obviously Confucianism. Like the Bible, for what it's worth, is a bunch of letters pushed together. That's the honest reality. That's what the New Testament is. But when it comes to Confucianism, like the Rise of Li, like you're dealing with an entire philosophy that goes into the very details of what it means to be as a person. That means if you think about the unformed, quite literally what they're doing is forming you. And in my opinion, it's a very good way of forming you, because what's in the Rights of Li is just to be a normal functioning human being. Just be a good father, be a good brother, be a good sister. Like these type of things is what's central. Just be a good person. That's basically it. Yeah, it's a very virtuous system. We used to have that in.
You've like a lot of these come up with the golden rule, which is essentially do unto others.
Yeah, that's what the Bible.
Which is. I mean, it's I think every kind of text like that would have something similar.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a universal thing because it's a very basic thing to learn.
Yeah, but that's the thing. In the West, we don't learn this anymore, and as a result, you see what Confucius already described in a nation where you don't have the family properly orientated anymore, you don't have the community properly orientated anymore. You get chaos, you get depression, you get anxiety, you get.
That's where all the subversions come in, because I'd say this has been an active effort from activists for decades at this point, because because they're trying to subvert. It's like one of the stated goals of Black Lives Matter, for example, was the abolition of the nuclear family, the family unit. So it's active subversion by activists.
That's new. That's something new, though, because this has been going on for 200 years.
Yeah, but I would say what I was going to say was these people have been fairly successful over the last several decades, at least. Probably
they've been successful for 230 years.
Oh, even longer than I thought then. So
this has been going on for quite a while.
I mean, because when I've noticed it would be from the 60s onwards. But that's as far back as I've gone.
Yeah.
Well, so
I think
obviously it's worse if it's going back a couple of centuries.
I mean, I can go through the details, right? Like when it comes to where it started, it specifically starts in the French Revolution. I think I've already said this multiple times.
You've mentioned, yeah.
Like when you look at the West specifically, we had obviously 2,000 years now of Christianity, because Christianity is still quote unquote the dominant religion within the West. If you don't consider atheism or agnosticism a religion, because otherwise it would be those, obviously. With the Catholic Church, they were more obsessed with politics, and as a result, that's kind of what you get, right? Like if you're more obsessed with the politics than what's actually in the book, you get a very consistent stage of the whole church being more obsessed with politics and actually getting things done. As a result, you get the Protestant Revolution. And from the Protestant Revolution is basically telling the Catholics to give them the middle finger, right? And then from there, you get the French Revolution. And the French Revolution is where they went, everything is a bourgeois institute, everything is oppression, and there was quite a lot of documents of what happened, right? Like you have defending genocide based on if you're not a citizen of the state, you're an enemy of the state. So when they went to Vendée, where the Catholics were, they just decided to completely wipe them out. And we saw this again in the Soviet Union when they were just exterminating Catholics for being Catholic, because you have to be loyal to the state, not loyal to a religion. Even in between the French Revolution and the Napoleon Wars. The Napoleon Wars is where this ideology got spread throughout Europe, right? As a result, the Holy Roman Empire fell. And then when the Holy Roman Empire fell, you had Nietzsche and Marx. The problem is like there's truth to what's in the communistic book from Marx, right? So when you look at this whole ideological vacuum that was created after the Napoleonic Wars, you get World War I. This is what Trotsky also wrote about. Like he made it very clear that due to that enormous vacuum of ideological warfare going on within Europe, like all it needed was a trigger. And that trigger happened with the assassination of the Archduke, right? World War II was more of a result of going way too far by punishing Germany a bit too extreme. But even in Germany, you had the predators. Due to the war, there were a lot of sons without a father. Quite natural, right? Like war, you lose your father, because who goes to war? The fathers. Who die? The fathers.
The men, yeah.
And these predators joined the Freikorps, because you look for hierarchy.
They joined the what? I didn't quite catch.
The Freikorps. It's a German word.
Okay, yeah. What is that? Because I don't know what that is.
It's basically a Nazi unit So these are the SS officers and stuff like that. They're the guys who are willing to do what it takes, because what they look for is hierarchy, right? And when you're looking for hierarchy, well, obviously Adolf Hitler was very good at spreading this hierarchy. Like, look at me, look how charismatic I am, look at what I can do for the country, etc., etc.
Yeah, it
And
was like the ultimate predator, wasn't he?
yeah, and then the golems look at that and they get attached to that, because the golems they seek that purpose and they found that purpose, and then after all that is done, they also join in. And now you've got two archetypes of men willing to do quite extreme things, right? It's kind of the direction I also started to go into. It starts quite simple because it's like we just want the illegals out and that's it. But eventually, if it escalates, you can most definitely escalate that situation. It all depends on how America is going to keep going over the years. Currently, things are still within, well, not morally acceptable, but within logically acceptable terms. Because everything that's happening right now there when it comes to ICE is just a logical conclusion of what's been happening for quite a long time now. We've spoken about those things, like sanctuary cities and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, we'll look at what's happening over here now with Restore being launched.
And that is kind of like the Davids again, right? The Davids are those with all the right words, all the right paperwork, all the right things to say, because the political field has shifted. And when it shifts, the curriculus, like a parasite, latches onto that. I think you already said this last week, right? Like you have a lot of people from, I forgot which party it was, but these are the guys that created the whole problem that are latching onto reform, right?
Yeah, but well, I'm not talking about Reform. I'm talking about Restore, the new one that got launched last week.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. Do you know about it? Have you paid attention to it?
No, I've been
seen the
really
advert
busy
for
with
Ripper
this
Raw.
philosophy.
Yeah. Well, you might want to look into it because it's basically set up by well, it's
Rupert
the
Lowe?
main guy. Yeah, Rupert Lowe's the main guy on it. He used to be in Reform, but he was kicked out by Farage as a basically Farage saw him as a threat as a threat. Got
Logical power.
through through quite underhanded means. So basically, Lowe has been he started Restore as a political movement, not a party, because he started this about last year.
Right.
And I joined up with it because I thought, well, it seems we're doing the right thing. But it's gotten to the point now. It's like we kind of need to. I'd rather not do this, but we kind of need to do it. Be an actual political party instead now, because there's literally nobody else who will fight for the things that we want for. So it's like it's one of those. You want it done, you do it yourself. I'd recommend because I don't want to taint your opinion of him. So I'd recommend watching the launch video. He put it up on Twitter. Last week. And you can also check the Restore Britain website as well, because it's got like a lot of the political aims on there.
Surprised you didn't post it
It's
on
well
Discord.
worth having a look.
Normally you post it.
Actually, I do remember. Yeah, it's the same site. So, but look it up now since it's
okay.
obviously been updated.
It's been updated. All right.
But check the launch video that was on Twitter last week. Because I mean, it's had a meteoric rise. It's like hundreds of thousands of people have signed up to it. It's basically trying to supplant Reform. It doesn't help that the names are similar. You say one, but you mean the other. But yeah, it's trying to supplant. It's trying to supplant Reform as the actual political party that will get things done, because it's trying to do things that Reform shirk away. Well, for that, Farage is trying to shirk away from. So I think it's probably it's a good thing to get behind. And I've gone on a ramble and completely forgot what my original point was now. What were we saying originally? Because I've completely forgot. I've completely derailed my own train of thought.
I got a cold, so my brain's also big. Dave?
Yeah, I've completely forgotten what my original point was.
What you got?
Yeah, Dave, save us.
Don't rely on me, but I'll kind of subvert the conversation. And one question I actually had on my mind for kind of both of you, we've been talking about obviously, children and family units, people raised by different parents and stuff like that. For me, like, there's been a lot of talk lately in terms of groups of people. We mentioned furries and stuff like that, and all of that degenerate kind of group. What do you feel about like incels?
That's the
Because
predators.
that's obviously right. Okay, okay.
Well, it's that because you've got that, but it's also used as a pejorative now.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people called incels who are actually married, so it's one
Really?
of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Words
no,
are
I,
music
I always
meaning.
seen it.
yeah, I was
I
gonna
always
say
seen.
it's one of those terms that have been. It was originally used to mean involuntary celibate.
Yeah.
So
It's an old word as well.
people who what?
It's an old word as well, incel.
Oh, I didn't.
Is
I
it?
mean, for me, it was a fairly recent one.
Yeah,
As a
definitely.
slur, yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, as the proper meaning.
The proper
As people are
meaning is
talking about,
from
like,
the early 90s, is what I remember, in the English language at least. So it's at
well,
least 30
well,
years old.
so I knew it as I'm guessing is the original meaning, like involuntary celibate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people who couldn't, or for some reason, I was going to say wouldn't, but that's not involuntary. But basically, people who couldn't, get laid, basically. And there's
Yeah.
various reasons. I mean, there's very societal reasons for that. But then it eventually started saying, well, it's a lot of incels who were for being blamed for a lot of school shootings in America and stuff like that. But then it starts to shift to just people I don't like.
Yeah.
You see people being called incels for political takes, which for one thing has got nothing to do with very little to do with politics, and two, a lot of these people are married or in relationships.
Yeah.
So again, it's one of those words. It's like when you get called a racist or a Nazi or something like that. It's basically, I don't like you. This is just used to shut down a conversation.
Physical
So
reading and stuff.
it's yeah. So it's become just another meaningless term for somebody who is politically opposed to me at this point. It's become another thought terminating cliche, which is a shame because you're better off having conversations with these people instead of just throwing insults at them, because that's all it's turned into now. It's just a pejorative, an insult.
Yeah, but then some of these people that have been interviewed and kind of give their views on why they are that type of person say that they find the struggle of any kind of relationship. They don't see that they'll be liked in any sort of way. Like even like they think that looks is everything, and if you don't have the looks,
I mean, those are
then
just
no
stories that
female
are
is
told,
going to
right?
like.
Because there's a lot
Yeah, of
of
course.
information
Yeah.
warfare going on online. But let's actually go into the biology. Because right now I've only spoken really about the philosophy, right? Like Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, not really Nietzsche, but we spoke a little about the will of power and his archetype. Like there's another archetype, but first let's go into the biology. So when it comes to the biology, there's neurological damage done by family breakdown that doesn't just impair impulse control. So it damages the capacity for ethical existence itself. So Kierkegaard do this, right, with aesthetic and the ethical stages. They require a certain type of psychological development, right? So the ability to make commitments that transcend immediate gratification, like to see oneself as a part of a continuous narrative rather than a series of disconnected moments, which is very important. That's what Confucianism philosophy is mostly about. Knowing, that's also what Roger Scruton pushed, like knowing that you are part of something bigger, transcendent purpose. So a child with a missing father, for example, has an elevated amygdala. This is a small part in the lower part of your brain. I won't go too much into the details, but they are mostly responsible for stress hormones and the capacity of understanding like the moral framework of what you're in, of your society, right? So child with a constantly elevated amygdala, which is what happens when you don't really know what masculinity is and when you don't really have a father figure in your life, the stress hormones never normalize. They cannot develop that capacity. So the brain gets shaped by chronic instability or then remains locked in survival mode, which is very dangerous. So you become
Yeah,
reactive.
because
Go on.
can I just
Yeah,
add to that? Sorry, it's because you're getting cortisol pumped into your brain,
yeah.
and your brain becomes reliant on you're constantly in that stressor mode.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, that's an addiction, isn't it? At that point.
No. It's a very dangerous
Well,
state of being. You become very reactive, present focused, and unable to envision a future stable enough
Yeah,
to.
you're always in the flight situation or fight or flight
Yeah.
situation. If your brain's constantly releasing cortisol, then you're constantly stressed, which means your body's in a constant state of stress, because your body can't determine whether a fear is actual physical or mental. So it can't determine between the two. The reaction, the chemical reaction, is the same,
Yeah.
even if the fear is not non-existent mentally or physically. So people can get
Wouldn't
themselves into states mentally
wouldn't that lead to
of
like
a perceived fear.
wouldn't that lead to like some kind of schizophrenia
No,
or
this is what leads
No, it's
to extremism and like school shootings and stuff like that, because they're constantly in that phase, and because they're unable to envision a future that's stable enough to justify the sacrifice of ethical commitment. They will choose radical policies. They will choose something like similar to fascism. They will seek something that justifies their existence. They get drawn to some charismatic leader. This is where the golem comes into play, or the predator comes into play.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because I'm trying to compare that to like some of the rhetoric I've heard coming from like anti-ISO.
But you can't
like
really trust anything they say.
No, I'm not. I'm comparing it to the rhetoric, and it's like,
Yeah,
it comes from a place of fear, doesn't
it
it?
does. Like, for example,
Yeah.
me without my father figure, because my father, even though I saw him every 2 weeks, was still very absent. He was a very passive father, and I learned that the hard way when I actually moved in with him. But the reality was, this is what my own mother described me as, and this is what the science confirms as well. A child without a proper masculine figure in their life, so specifically like their biological father, develops a lot of anxiety. And the way my mother always describes me when I was young was a very anxious child, which is a one-to-one directly related to what the science confirms, because there's a lot of scientific research about this between, I believe 2009 and 2015, around that area, where they consistently got the same results. So that means the pattern is there at that stage. It becomes very undeniable, where every single time they were testing cases of children with like unstable father figures or unstable masculine presence, they will become extremely anxious. And that's when the survival mode kicks in. Because if you as a human being are anxious, that means you're going to go into fight or flight. Because your body is like, okay, we're in trouble. We need to somehow resolve this problem. And sometimes it goes with, but these are exceptions, and exceptions are great stories. But the generalization is when this continuously happens, men like that will start voting, because protection itself, from what we are biologically preparing for, as the research from what we spoke about last week showed, right? Women prefer a man, even if he fails, to protect no matter what. That's just a deal breaker if he doesn't do that, even if he fails. That is fundamentally over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, just written in our DNA somehow, where protection is an absolute. And when men don't know how to envision that, that's when the archetypes comes in. Some become passive and they just retreat. That's kind of like the incel type of behavior. Some become the Davis. They start virtue signaling. They start saying all the right things to get any attention of women. But more often than not, women see that and know that it's fake. So a lot of these Davids do end up being childless, just because women somehow do know when something isn't the real thing, because they seek for a man to stand in front of the wolf, even if he fails. And Davids don't do that. They calculate, they observe. David is a degenerate, David is the white knight that constantly goes over, like, I am saying the right things in critical theory, I'm saying the right things with ICE and stuff like that, despite the fact that legally speaking, ICE is not really doing anything wrong. Like, these are the type of things.
You've got, it's like the classic male feminist ones. It's like
Same thing,
you always get them.
Same thing.
Yeah, because you get them because like they seem to be just saying it just so they can get with women.
Exactly.
And then then it's like the whole reset the clock thing, because it's like they always get done for like sexually assaulting a woman or something like that, because it's like, well, they're playing to the wrong crowd there.
Yeah, it's also Black Lives Matter. Like, they always want to jump onto any of these movements to perform. That's the best way to show it, right? That's what the curriculum is. Like, it's someone that performs all the right things but doesn't actually know how to do anything. And they were also
a hypocrite.
It is a hypocrite, yes. They're also a parasite. Like, they are Like, if you go into the Will Durant type of the theory when it comes to the fall of the Roman Empire, he made it very clear that the prime reason for the collapse of the Roman Empire is the capture of the institutions. So when the institutions are not teaching the right things anymore, because these Davids, the White Knights, they will be taught anything that's in the university. And, well, what Roger Scruton already said, right, in the 1960s, the institutions were already captured by Marxist thought. And Marxism, well, we've seen what that breeds. And when you're not allowed to protect, that's the other side, right? When you're not allowed to protect, you're going to vote to protect. And that's when you get into Dostoevsky's view of the Leviathan. Because the Leviathan is essentially the end stage where you're just going to vote for something so extreme they'll just take care of it. So the state will do all the dirty work for you. And, well, we know what communism looks like.
I mean, well, so you can give yourself, plausible deniability. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't me who did
exactly.
it. It's like a lot of stuff with all the maid stuff that's going on in Canada. It's like a lot of people want the state to do because they don't want to deal with it themselves.
That is exactly what's happening. Like, Canada is already heading towards the communistic state. That's quite obvious what's happening over there. It's very similar to Spain.
Yeah, I've been saying it's between well, it's all the Commonwealth countries. It's always been us in the UK, Australia, and Canada, which have been leapfrogging each other to see which can get to full-on communism or fascism first. But I think Canada's pulled ahead.
No. Spain is ahead. Like, you're forgetting the underdog here, Mike. It's the Spanish.
I remember you mentioned that last. I'd forgotten about that, actually.
Yeah, they legalized over 500,000 illegals because their birth rates have been so bad for over 40 years that they're so desperate for anything. And then you become a recycling nation because you will, again, the institutions will teach the children that everything's bad. Then these people won't have children, and then you need to import again. And it's a vicious cycle of importation because you are not creating ideology that is healthy for the nation itself, and eventually it will collapse, obviously. But that is when it comes to what was I going to say? Like, when it comes to Confucianism, it's very clear, right? Let the ruler be a ruler, the subject, and the father, a father, and the son, a son. But for that, you actually need to know what it looks like. And if you don't have a good example, go on.
Just going back to obviously not having good parentage or good lineage, do you think that's a good route to having a personality disorder?
What do you mean?
Because I mean, you see a lot of these times that, you know, certain archetypes have traits within them that would constitute to a personality disorder.
But that's the thing with psychology. You should not take psychology seriously. Like, when it comes to everything that we know, philosophy is the grandfather. You could say that the father is science itself, and when it comes to psychology, it's just an infant right now. And they're just throwing names at everything. Like, if you go by the definition of what psychology nowadays considers autism, then every single person on this planet has autism. Congratulations, nobody has autism anymore. Like, the psychology world right now is extremely damaging to society. Like, if you think about nations itself, like, think about middle school, right? In my country, around 40% of children are drugged because they are considered a chemical problem and not a real human being. Because what we are meant to believe is this blank state theory, is that you are an empty page that can be written on, right? That's blank state theory. And psychology is actively helping that whole system by giving everything a name. And by giving everything a name, you become a problem. And by being a problem, they can give you medication. And 40% of students, doesn't matter what gender, in middle school are drugged just so that they are behaving, which is, in my opinion, absolutely disgusting and child abuse. Let's think, like, we are human beings, but we're not treated as human beings. We're treated as numbers. We're treated as chemical problems. And this obviously is very motivated by the atheists as well, because that's exactly what they believe. We're just a lump of meat that functions with chemicals, and that's it. Which is extremely inhumane if you treat people that way. But that is what we're doing. It's a very Marxist view. If you think about the Soviet Union, what were they? Well, the state was a transcendent purpose. So the motherland, Russia, that's something from Stalin, because Lenin didn't do that. Lenin made the situation extremely bad. Stalin also didn't want to do all that. And with a certain purpose, well, it was the World War that actually forced him to put the family back together with masculine rules and feminine rules. Because otherwise, Russia would have lost the war extremely easily because they were not reproducing whatsoever. And in order to win a war, you need capable men, right?
Yeah.
And we know what communism looks like. So we've seen it in China, we've seen it in Soviet Union, we've seen it in North Korea, we've seen it in Colombia. The conclusion is always the same. The state makes rules, and anyone who doesn't follow the rules goes into re-education camps. So what will they do in re-education camps? They will drug you. They will force you and brainwash you into a certain way, so you think a certain way. And you get into that one movie from Jim Carrey, I forgot what the name was, where everything is just a performance.
Truman Show, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. That's what it becomes. That is literally what communism is. Everything is a show. Everything is just performance. Everything is just go with the flow and don't get into anyone's way. But when it comes to fascism, it is a much more aggressive version. It's basically just hostile to everything except itself. Eventually it will devour itself, but first it's hostile to everything else, right? Because if you think about the Nazis, they invaded everyone. Total war. But that's just not sustainable whatsoever. Whereas communism hides on the moral cover, where they're pretending to have the right answers, where they're pretending to have the right ideas, but in reality, they're even more evil than fascism. Because, more than 100 million plus dead, yeah, I consider that a pretty good test case to not do that again.
130 million plus and counting.
Yeah, and counting. Yeah, it's still going. There's still concentration now, re-education camps. That's been nice in China, and there's still re-education camps in North Korea.
We've got struggle sessions over here.
Yeah, like send the children that are problematic or like adults to certain places so that they, keep their mouth shut. And then also you have the complete removal of freedom of speech. Like communism basically means you get nothing and you'll be happy about it. And if you do try to do something, we'll just get rid of you because you're not allowed to be exceptional. You need to be perfectly molded into what we find acceptable, which is obviously.
You need to be mediocre.
Yeah, quite literally, yes. That is literally what communism is. Be mediocre. Don't create culture. Don't create science. Just be mediocre. Just live. Just exist. It's an extremely disgusting philosophy. The fact that it's not illegal in the West is disgraceful, to say the least. Why did we have a Cold War if we were going to tolerate it anyway? Makes no sense. But that is communism, and all of these archetypes is like, because the European Union, which what the United Kingdom was part of, is an economic model that is in between capitalism and communism. It has Marxist thoughts, and if you have Marxist thoughts, that means the institutions are teaching you Marxist philosophy, right? And if Marxist philosophy is being taught, well, we know what the end version of Marxism looks like. The family itself gets dissolved. And when the family itself gets dissolved, that's when we are today. That's what we're talking about today, right? We get all this archetype, because there's the feminine side, we'll talk about that in another episode. But the masculine side is just this. You have all these archetypes. Obviously, the three main ones are the predators, the white knights, and the passive people, because they're most easily observed. If they are informed, though, we can identify with that archetype ourselves. With the degenerate, though, that's very easy to observe as well if you're online quite often, because they're all over the place. You have the clown. Well, I think everyone has seen the chronic shit posters, the people that just do weed all the time, do drugs, and they glorify being high all the time, which is obviously not something you want to do. Because if that's your life, it's going to be a very poor life, because that means you're living on a high and you need more and more drugs. And the more drugs you need, the faster you're going to meet the final end, right? Which is that. Of the golem, the one that gets captured, which is, I mean, I understand that they exist, but it's just unfortunate. Because in the end, even if you do have a perfect family, there is still a chance that due to some medical problems or, some issues, they will still become extremists, right? Like you have serial killers, for example, that you have on one side the serial killers that did have a very nasty childhood. Let's not deny that one, but you also have serial killers where it's like, he seemed like the right guy, but still ended up that way. Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah. You get from both ends. You get people who are raised into brilliant families, no problems, but yet they grow up to be absolute.
Yeah, those walls
they don't contribute to society. But then you get the complete opposite, where people are raised in terrible childhoods, and they grow up to be outstanding members of society.
Those are exceptions, and we can't build our society on exception, because then you destroy society itself. So we need to accept the exception that exists, and we need to be happy that they exist and champion them, if anything. But at the same time, we need to be realistic with the average people, right? And then we have the last one, the one we didn't speak about yet, because that's kind of what that person is in the first place, the ghost. This is someone with severe social anxiety, crippling depression. They live their life almost entirely in fantasy. Like, let's just say they video game or like watch anime or do immersive daydream like 16 hours per day. They live on welfare, and the Japanese have a word for it, hikikomori, because that's what hikikomori is. It's extreme social withdrawal where young people become recluses in their own room, sometimes for years, sometimes forever. Who knows? We don't know that because it's a very new thing, right? Because the external world is.
I'm lucky I got it. I got going with a joke because I could have very easily ended up in that situation.
But as for the external world, is too overwhelming. So the expectation of masculine performance is too terrifying. Something you see quite clearly in Japan. But in the West, you see it as well, where masculinity has been, well, you have always, everything's toxic masculinity, so masculinity is bad, but then you just retreat.
Attack.
What do you say?
It's under attack.
Yeah, it's under attack. So what the ghost does, he doesn't choose passivity, he just collapses into it. So his hyperactive amygdala and his elevated cortisol, they just win. And his brain's form of survival mode become permanent. And at that stage, what they do is they do extreme withdrawal. They want nothing to do with anything anymore, and they just want absence. Which is a very lonely life. I've met several of these. Some of them actually quite smart, to be honest. Like in my journey in becoming a polyglot, like when I learned Japanese, due to the nature of people that are attracted to the Japanese language, which is mostly anime, which is not really what I'm attracted to, you do meet these type of people, and these are people that just don't want to rely on anything. And how do you not rely on anything when you make sure you don't need subtitles? You just make sure you know the language itself. And then you live an entire fantasy, and they create an entire narrative around themselves. Not necessarily for an otaku, because an otaku is still different, right? That's still within the degenerate part side, but more just living a fantasy of what could have been. Because a lot of anime tells stories like that.
Well, you've also got like the localizer issue that's happening.
That too, yeah.
Now,
where
the literally rewriting the script. I mean, I saw one over Christmas, right? You know the horse game. I can't remember what it's called.
Uma Musume or something.
So like the horse game. There was a thing that came out, like a Christmas event that came out with that, and in every language except for English, they said "Merry Christmas" in it. And literally, I actually heard the Japanese version of it. They literally say "Merry Christmas." Like the English words "Merry Christmas." Yeah, "Merry Christmas," like that. Yeah.
Not your version, but yeah.
Yeah, but then look, I did take a few Japanese lessons once. I can't speak that language though. But because I did learn some pronunciation. But that's about as far as I got. But but then they say Merry Christmas, but in English it was always translated to Happy Holidays.
Yep, it's happening in my country as well.
And in every other language, it would say Merry Christmas when it was subtitled. So it's again the activists getting into the change in language again, which changes the meaning of things, which subverts these stories to suit their own purposes.
It's part of Marxism.
The whole thing is subversion.
Yeah, like you want to make all language neutral, you want all families neutral, you want everything neutral, which is a disgusting way of reading because it means you stop being human.
Birth in person comes to mind.
Yeah. That's from the French. Like the French are still pushing that nonsense within the European Union. They actually succeeded, and I'm disgusted by it.
Yeah, they've tried it over here as well, which recently got overturned, fortunately. But Jesus, it's like the whole terms of it. That's what I'm thinking. Things, depending on how it goes with Restore, there might actually be some improvements coming. Maybe not immediately, but over the next several years, a decade, maybe. Fingers crossed.
I don't think England will last.
I mean, we're not at the breaking point just yet, although we are edging inexorably closer. But this might be the last gasp. It's like the last attempt to stop it, and it might be a do or die thing. If it succeeds, great. If it doesn't, then we are done as a nation.
Yeah, because what I honestly think is that too many people are captured by what Kierkegaard calls the false ethical stage, which is a system of like massive commitments and sacrifice that give life shape and purpose. And the transcendent purpose, it's something you have in South Korea. You have transcendent purpose, but more for the class stage, which is extremely bad because if you're loyal to your class status, that means you're more obsessed with that than your own family. So the reason for families construction being so poor there is because the masculine form of protection has begun to protect the status of the family. But
isn't it just another form of narcissism?
No, it's like the poor version of Confucianism. Because of Confucianism and capitalism is kind of they're the worst of both, which makes it so that you have manager moms, for example, arbitrary, which is again monoculture, frontier specifically, where both husband and wife, mother and father, are raised on the idea that number is everything. So you get trained from a young age to be a cog in the machine, which means you will never see what it means to be an actual masculine entity. You just know that you have to be a salaryman or work for Samsung or work for Hyundai. That's what they get taught from a young age. And when that's the only thing you see from your father, that's what you have to rely on. And then because you think that's the transition, because that's what you're going to get you a wife, well, what the daughter sees is the father is never home. And it clashes against each other. And this is why in South Korea you have the worst division between men and women ever, almost. Because there's such a fundamental different understanding of what is necessary. The men look to their father and like, okay, this is what I have to do. The women see that and they're like, well, this is not what we want. So the transaction of we want protection specifically within the family for the child. You need to come home and raise the child with me, which is not what's happening. Because what the man is doing is they're protecting the family status. So what they do is they make sure that they do everything to make sure that there's financial support. That means there's money, there's a car, there's a house, there's food. All of these things are set in stone, but they're never home because in order to participate in that culture, you need to be working with your superiors. That's the hierarchy. And after work, you will most likely have to go mechu, which is beer and chicken. They will go and go out for drinks. And then you get home, you got to get drunk, or you have no energy anymore. What do? Yeah, you go to bed. That's you're doing the masculine form of protection without actually being there for your family, which is again the same issue that Confucius actually described. You need to have the family itself be in check. If you're only doing the steps, it then becomes performative, right?
Well, that goes back to virtue signaling.
Exactly. Like it's a form of virtue signaling because when it comes to the white knight, what they're doing was being told. Because that's quite literally what the white is. It's not really an unformed, but it's basically you're formed to what the institutions tell you.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, because every single Gorkiclus has gone to university. And what does a university teach you? In current society, they teach you Marxism, which should maybe not be banned, but should be made very clear to what the end stage of Marxism is. Because
it should also be put up against all the other ideologies out there, so you can at least get an idea of which one you prefer, as opposed to just
fascism. It's not even like a written down ideology, you know. Like it's just something the Nazis came up with. They borrowed several philosophies and ideologies and mythologies, and they pushed it into one thing. But it's very uncohesive. So anyone who reads this like, it is nonsense. But with Marxism, it seems like, this makes sense.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Just want to get your opinion. Is there anything in Marxism that could potentially be good or salvageable?
Obviously. That's what we tried, but that's the issue. Like, you get one generation that gets the good side, because for what it's worth, Karl Marx saw genuine injustice in England. They saw child labor, working inhumane amounts of hours in industrial complexes that are extremely unhealthy to the child itself. Like he saw things that were, by every single meaning of the definition, predatory to children. And the whole goal was to make sure that that doesn't happen. The problem is, he came with a solution that was 100,000 times worse. Because Karl Marx was extremely anti-capitalism. But even with capitalism, there's good parts of it. And if you think about Confucian philosophy. So this is quite straight from how Confucius himself taught his students, is that a nation, a culture, something that Roger Scruton said as well, is a continuous work. That means you are a steward within time, which means you're responsible for looking backwards to what was bad and building towards what was good. And this is something the European Union tried and they failed miserably because for whatever reason they decided that, you know what, this whole family thing is oppressive and this whole gender thing is oppressive. That's oppressive, that's a patriarchy, that's a patriarchy. They completely destroyed everything. And that's also from Marxism. And it's also from the French Revolution. But the problem is the solution that Karl Marx came up with was the same thing with the French Revolution did. And anyone that has more than 2 brain cells can read the French Revolution and they see the guillotine and they see the genocides and they're like, yeah, maybe we should not do that.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the cure's worse than the disease.
Exactly. It's like having a headache and curing it with a decapitation.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, yeah, I broke a nail. I cut off my entire finger. You know.
Yeah, that is logic that the French did. Like when it comes to Robespierre, like Robespierre was an insufferable piece of shit. I'm just gonna be real, because within
He
the
was a cunt.
he was bad for definition of the cunt, yeah. But the government at the time were kind of in agreement to finish things. So they were going to just finalize things and be like, okay, enough is enough. Like, let's just move onward. In hindsight, Robespierre did have a point because letters had been retrieved from the French king at the time that he was trading letters with the Austrian Empire, where they were gonna, send armies within France. So the king was definitely doing something, but they didn't know that. Robespierre was just for the sake of it, going heavily against it and riding people up and going.
So like he's right for the wrong reasons.
Yes, and that is quite literally how it was. Like he died the same way it all started. So but
yeah, no, I mean, he did get a taste of his own medicine.
Exactly.
So.
But that's the type of thing. Like Napoleon took that whole project over, and then you get back towards the whole man without a father concept. You get the golems, you get the predators, and they see Napoleon, they see this midget walking around with all this charisma, and they're like, yeah, let's follow that guy. Like, I forgot who I read this about. Was it Nietzsche? I'm not entirely sure. Was it Kant, maybe? I forgot which philosopher. I think it was Kant, actually, who saw Napoleon riding through the villages and made the observation of his presence. And that presence is very similar to what Adolf Hitler showed, right? This presence that attracts people.
Well, yeah, so some people just have the charisma to
Exactly.
get away with it.
And that is kind of like a danger as well. Like you get attracted to the type of thing. And we know from third wave experiment that these type of people are very subjective to losing themselves in their power. Because Napoleon definitely lost himself in that power at one point. Eventually, like we did beat him backwards. We did need the Russians for that. But in that stage, there already became a massive ideological warfare. Just because Napoleon did so much invading, everyone was like, no, whatever we're doing is wrong, so we need to reevaluate things. So that's where we currently are. We are constantly reevaluating. But for whatever reason, nobody looked at the Soviet project and went, maybe we should not do that. Because the European Union, for what it's worth, did take the right things. Because if you think about some laws that the European Union is passing when it comes to protecting its own interests, like the USPC and stuff like that, it is a pretty good institution. The problem is the European Union is not a democracy. It's a totalitarian institute. Nobody votes for the people in charge. If anything, when it comes to the woman in charge, she's only in charge because she's a woman, because, virtue signaling, you need to put a woman in charge because she's nothing more than a puppet. Because we know for a fact, she was one of the most horrific ministers of all time in German history. And that...
for those who don't know, he's talking about Angela Merkel.
No.
Oh, aren't you?
I'm talking about the European Union.
I thought she was the worst one. Well, she was in charge of the
Germany.
She was the head of she was the PM of Germany, but president of Germany, but she also was in charge of the EU at one point.
No, Ursula.
Because it rotates.
No, but Ursula von der Leyen is in charge.
No, is that currently?
Yeah, for the past while already.
Yeah. No, because Merkel was horrible enough as it was when she was in charge.
Yeah, like she served as president of the council. When was this? I think it was before the financial crisis, I believe. Yeah, I think
It was
about
it was that and the migrant crisis she
Yeah.
presided over.
No, but that's not her. Like, what was it? 2007, 2008, 2009.
It's probably I think up to 2014, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere around that.
Mid 2010s. Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't part of the immigration crisis, but she was pushing for it. Like, when it comes to European Union, it's basically what a lot of people say German imperialism, which there's truth to that.
Well, yeah, it's the Fourth Reich.
Kinda, yeah. Like Ursula von der Leyen had absolutely no business being in European Parliament.
Did you see that video where some German politician? Well, they're all these German politicians were standing around, and they were waving like mini EU flags, but one of them was waving a German flag, and then Merkel just snatches the flag off of him and throws it away because it's more Europe over Germany.
Yeah, and now we're seeing the consequences of that, because in Germany, if you think about it, a lot of men are being taught that being a man is bad. They're demonizing men for what happened in World War II. But, I mean, none of these children were there. So why are they being blamed, right? And if anything, the German Reich was a very short period. The Soviet one was much longer. And, I mean, the kill count for the Soviets, goddamn. Like, even
Well,
when
like we said, it's still counting.
Yeah, but even when the Soviet Union, quote unquote, liberated the countries that the Nazis invaded, I mean, everyone knows the stories. The rapes, the tortures. Like, these Russians did not treat the nations they liberated nicely whatsoever. So it's kind of like, you can look at that and be like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Like, you could just have like an economist that be like, looks at Marxism and be like, okay, we can take some things from that and let's move on. Because Thomas Sowell, for example, he's written so many books at this. I think it's like 50 plus by now. Dude's a genius. But he's taken a lot of concepts from the economy world and actually enhanced it towards like more cultural perspective, and like enhanced to like be broader in perspective, to actually be supportive of future generations. Like, that's what you need for someone, not to take a system and be like, well, they just did it wrong. Because that's the type of attitude, the arrogance that the previous generation had. It's like, oh, no, they just did it poorly. Which is like, no, they didn't. Because Marxism very clearly states that the bourgeois that they did in France was not far enough. And if that's your opinion, that means you are more than willing with genocide, which is exactly what every single communist state has ever done, ever. Because Soviet Union did genocide, China did genocide, North Korea, Colombia.
You've got to do a genocide or two to get your utopia set up properly, haven't you?
Yeah,
God.
and that brings you back to Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky wrote quite clearly that people with the intention towards a utopian institution more often than not create dystopia that is often even more evil than what we started with. And that brings me to Civilized, right? Like the white knights of today, the Davids, the ones who say all the right things, are quite literally directly responsible for the destruction of our countries. Because they do all the right things, quote unquote, they say all the right words, and the consequences we have to map. Like in my country, we have the CBS, Central Bureau of Statistics. I know exactly where to go if I want my numbers. Like, it's so easy because my country is, by its nature, a Germanic nature. We like our numbers, right? We're very good paperwork. We love that shit for whatever reason. And in our paperwork, we see what we've done, but looking the other way is easier. And that brings you kind of to the Nuremberg trials, right? A lot of SS officer, SS guards, what they would often say is, I didn't know.
I was just following orders.
I was just following orders, yeah. I was just following modern ideology. I was just doing what I was told. That's what the Davids are. Like, the predators are what causes fascism, and the white knights is what causes this.
You know what it reminds me of? You know about the Queaslings?
No.
It was named. I can't remember. It's named after a guy called Queasling from back in World War II. I think he was like a minister of Poland. If I'm gonna get it right, but it's basically a person who joins the other side to basically subvert your own side, to basically get the other side in power.
Oh yeah, I've heard
Let
of
me see
it.
if I can.
God, what is
Yeah,
it
let
called?
me. Yeah, basically, the actual term of it is it's a traitor who serves as a puppet of the enemy when they're occupying the country.
Yeah, it's a
Here we
spy
go.
book.
Yeah, Vidkun Queasling. Oh, he's Norwegian. That was it, not Polish.
How do you
Yeah.
spell that?
Vidkun, Vidkun, and then Quisling is
There's
Qui. Yeah.
the former Minister of Defense of Norway. Yeah, now I remember. Yeah, there were a lot of politicians that were, even in the United States, that actually supported the Nazi rise. Because what a lot of people don't know is that everyone speaking English in America is actually quite new. Before World War II, a lot of places in America actually spoke German. It was only because of the war with the Germans that they just completely got rid of it. They were like, from now on, you're American, you speak English. Yeah, you can look this up. Quite a new thing to only be English only. Like, they were quite open to bringing your own culture, because in the end, like, the United States was built on like mostly Germanic people, right? Like the Dutch, the Germans, the English, the Irish, the Norwegians. Like, they were the ones that mostly went there. Obviously, when we
Well,
talk,
what about like in
Didn't know
Canada,
that.
Quebec?
that's the
You say
French.
mostly
There's a
French.
reason Quebec speaks French, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's like, imagine if Canada went to war with France, they'd probably tell Quebec, okay, no more French.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened with America. They were like, okay, no more German.
Wow. Okay.
We go French instead.
That would have been that, because like French philosophy since the French Revolution has been some of the most disgusting things I've ever read. Like, every single time I read a French philosopher, I'm like, oh god, here we go again. They're having opinions about destroying everything again, because like
Well,
one of the most
isn't it all? Yeah, it's all based on envy as well, isn't it? A lot of it's based on envy.
like Foucault, for example, he made the argument that the revolution is never over, and if the revolution is never over, that means you're never done, you're never finished. That means a permanent revolution.
You've got to. Yeah, you've got to give yourself something to do, haven't you?
Yeah, like
You
this is a
you got to keep those hands busy.
this is the permanent white knight, so to say. Like, always something to do,
What-
so always pussy to get.
Do you think in a twisted way, it's like basically keeping the the idle hands of the devil's playthings to its logical extreme?
I mean, my opinion is more the philosophical conclusion that we're all made to find a partner in life. And in evolution, especially with modern research, we know the type of things required for a woman to be attracted to a man. Obviously, there's going to be the opposite side of that as well. I'm not too familiar with that, because as a man, I just have no idea. Too complicated for me. Women are complicated. But when it comes to specifically this type of perception, when we now know that protection is a deal breaker almost, and if you think about where we force our methods of protection in the past 200 years, it's been to the state. Because we've made the decision for some reason to be like, I can't protect my sister anymore. I need to let my sister get raped and then make a police report, and then in 2 weeks, maybe something happens. Which is obviously not how we want to go about things, because that's extremely bad for the nation. But that's what we've been doing for the past few decades. And well, I have a sister,
But
and
in the same token, you can't take the law into your own hands, can you?
no,
Really?
but protecting is what we're talking about, Dave. Here, you're talking about vigilantism now, and that's a different thing.
Okay.
Like,
Well, no,
Just
because
define the difference.
we did do an example of this. I think it was last week with Daniel Penny.
yeah.
Who was
That is a good example.
protected, and but he, I mean, as far as I'm aware, he's still going through the legal ringer because of what he did, and he was protecting the person. But going, no, you attacked a black man, therefore you're
Exactly.
automatically racist. Never mind the fact that this guy was on drugs and being an active threat to people on the train.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's trained for this. Keep in mind, he was trained for this.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate the guy died, but I mean, you can't blame Penny for that. I mean, he would have had to put him in a chokehold if this guy wasn't being an active threat. But that, like you said, these kind of people, because like you'd say he was doing his basic duty to protect, and yeah, he gets. He gets the gratitude of all the people around him, but the system and the ideologues basically condemn him as the worst thing they can call someone in their mind, a racist.
And that's when you get this thing, Dave. Like, if we can't protect, we're going to vote for something to protect. And that will take more and more and more extreme looks. That's kind of like the philosophy I've been developing, where the more you basically eliminate the family, the more you eliminate what we actually are as human beings. We don't get treated like human beings anymore. And then we see these things and we're like, well, let's just vote in, like, it's kind of like put your mouth where your word is. Like, you have to then just vote for it with all consequences of do, right? Because right now what we're doing is we're seeing the consequences of the Soviet Union, we're seeing the consequences of China, we see the consequences of North Korea, the consequences of Colombia, we see the consequences of the Third Reich. All these consequences, yet we're still repeating the same stories because there's just...
Would you say we're seeing the consequences? I'd say we're more like we're ignoring the consequences.
I mean, I'm talking more about we're likely going to war again. That's kind of what I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, we see the consequences, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
They're either sticking their heads in the sand or they're actively trying to bring it about.
which is quite interesting because even in the Bible, right, there's so many stories about people who have eyes but they can't see, and that's what the white knight does. Because when I brought up the Central Bureau of Statistics, right, we know exactly what these people in government are doing, but to say the right things, they're looking the other way because that's what gets you votes, and eventually.
And a lot of people don't want to rock the boat either. They want to be comfortable in the present.
Exactly. Like, democracy is just that type of system. It's a system where people vote for their own interest, and eventually that own interest will be, I want to protect my daughter, I want to protect my mother, I want to protect my sister, because that's where the masculine instinct goes. So you see it in South Korea, where the men are very focused on this is where we're going, because that's what the men want. And the women don't want that; they want more balance, which is fair enough.
I'd say it's become that. We could probably bring it back to a better version of itself, but it has to be actively maintained, and we've just kind of let it become this. I guess you get this cesspool, as it were, where like you say, it's just people saying the right things. But yeah, I think it needs active maintenance to make sure we don't have people like the current slate of politicians who are just there because it shouldn't be a career path, basically. I think.
Yeah, but that's just the thing, right? Like, when you think about institutions, like, eventually you're going to go into a direction. And, well, I'm just going to be real. Most of the people that have a minister position in my government don't have children.
Right.
Like, when it comes
that's the
to...
same for the UK government.
I don't know, but like, when I think about the White Knight, they perform the virtue signaling, and women are just not attracted to that. They want to actually get the man that protects, which is why a lot of women who do have children end up with like a predator. And that's why, like, even more in the extreme, you have a lot of domestic violence with these types, because that's what attracts the women, right? Like, if you think about one of the most sold smut books out there is 50 Shades of Grey. That's a lot of women that are into a certain type of man. Not a small number. These are hundreds of millions, right? It's one of the most sold books. But that just goes to show, like, the type of thing that attracts a woman. Am I saying we should be doing that? No. I'm just saying these are what we can observe. And when I have 100 million plus case studies, I'm like, yeah, this is more than enough for me to be like, yeah, that there is a pattern when it comes to certain masculine traits that women simply want, and that you cannot casually reprogram in university. Because the White Knight, for what it's worth, they virtue signal everything, but they all end up childless. Because they are a performer.
Or more recently in prison.
Or that.
because they get me too'd.
Yeah, because they're also kind of the type that deserve it, right? They're very narcissistic, so they're also incels more often than not when it comes to behavior.
I'm the good guy. Look at all
Exactly.
the stuff I'm doing.
The nice guy trope.
Yeah, I deserve a woman.
That's
it's like
accurate.
No. To be honest, it's like I said before, they're going for the wrong type of woman as well, because a lot of these women are ideologically captured, by like by extreme feminism. So they're automatically a danger to most men anyway. You'd want to go for someone who's a little less extreme, but for some reason, these guys think it's a good idea to try and court these women. So it's like, at that point, you kind of deserve everything you get.
Let me just
It'd be nice to have
put one
a
thing out
female
there
perspective on this.
about masculinity. So, kind of like where I'm standing when it comes to how to be a man, I have several suggestions, maybe. Because everyone knows Sparta, right?
I mean, yeah, I know Sparta.
So
Oh, Sparta, right? Okay.
Sparta,
I thought you said something.
No,
I
Greek
thought you said
state,
something
the Greek
else.
state.
no, you must know that this is Sparta. Meme.
Yeah, yeah.
So for masculine forming, kind of how I look at it, you need Spartan discipline with Christian sacrifice. So this would mean refusal to accept that strength and love oppose each other. So the father who demands excellence from his son while dying for him, if necessary, proves that the therapeutic split is a lie. And so his existence demonstrates that masculine strength, rightly ordered, is not toxic. It's essential. So toxicity comes from strength wrongly ordered. So the predator. And then you need Christian sacrifice plus confusion duty. So this is a refusal to accept that transcendent purpose can exist without particular loyalties. So the man who loves humanity while neglecting his own family is performing extraction of virtue. So real love is concrete, and these children, this wife, this community, that is what you need. So the confusion ordering the family first, then outward is not selfishness, but reality. Then you need confusion duty and Lockean sovereignty, which is the refusal to accept that proper ordering requires authoritarian submission. So the father has absolute authority within his own household, not because the state grants it, but because natural law demands it. So his children are not the state's children on loan, but his family duties precede and supersede state permission, which can be dangerous. But again, whenever I read about these very extreme cases, these are all exceptions. Why would I punish all families just because some exceptions out there are doing horrible things to their children? Do they need to protect it? Absolutely. But why am I attacking all families if I don't have to? Then you have...
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got, it's, get your own house in order first.
Exactly what I just said, right? And then you need Lockean sovereignty.
I was just putting it more succinctly.
Yeah. And then you need Lockean sovereignty with Musashi's mastery. So Miyamoto Musashi, the Japanese samurai. So it's a refusal to accept that right exists without the capacity to defend them. So the man who claims sovereignty but cannot protect himself or his family is performing a theory, not living a reality. Musashi himself spent decades cultivating the capacity for violence precisely so that his sovereignty was real rather than rhetorical. So this is rights without capacity or wishes. Rights with capacity are realities. So kind of the formation of it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Because you do need to be capable of at least defending. Like pretty much everyone that I know when I did martial arts training, but there's exceptions, but more often than not, we all learn like, okay, we know the damage we can do, so we don't do it. Like one of the key things that you learn when you do boxing for 7 years is it's better to just run away because you're way fitter. There's no way they're going to catch you. But let's say you're with your girlfriend or with your wife, she probably can't run away. Now you have a decision to make. Do you abandon her, which, as we already know now with that research, deal breaker, or do you stand in front of her? And then it's about, okay, like, how do you resolve the solution? You need to...
Which is the actual virtuous thing to do at that point?
Exactly.
And not the performative virtue.
Yeah. Like the research shows, right?
A performative virtue would be like, oh no, you can get him, love. Go.
Yeah, I've seen videos like that as well.
And you stand back and do that. That'd be performative. But an actual proper act of virtue in that case would be putting yourself in harm's way. So you'd stand between them.
Yep.
In the ideal. Yeah?
That's what the research showed, right? It's about the attempt to protect, not even the result of it. But just as long as you were willing, that was more than enough.
Yeah.
But that's, again, like, it's very complicated. And then the last thing that I have is Musashi's mastery with Spartan discipline. So this is a refusal to accept that cultivation can happen without sustained hardship. The man who seeks mastery to comfort will achieve neither voluntary suffering, physical training, martial discipline, the daily choice to do difficult things creates a substrate that makes mastery possible. So the sheathed sword requires decades of cultivation. There are no shortcuts, there are no hacks, there are no optimization schemes that replace time and suffering. So each integration from everything I just listed challenges the core premises of modernity. Strength and love are complementary. This challenges therapeutic ideology. Universal love without particular duties is fraught. This challenges cosmopolitan abstraction. Natural duties precede state authority. This challenges administrative state. Quite literally, if you think about Taoism, If you put dams everywhere, eventually the dam is going to break. Rights require capacity to defend, so this challenges pure individualism, which is a huge problem in the West. And mastery requires sustained hardship, and this challenges the consumerist immediacy, also a huge problem in the West. This is how I, so far, think of masculinity. These are the things you need. These 5 things. I'm here with 2 other men. What are we thinking?
Wait, did you just assume my gender?
Yes. Got a problem with that?
Shit.
I mean, yeah. I suppose we all hold these values to a degree. Maybe some more than others. Maybe some more important than others.
Well, everyone's got their own view on it. So even though we are, even though we are quite similar in our views, we're not in lockstep. I mean, we've argued about tons of stuff behind the scenes.
Oh,
so so we all generally want to get to the same place. How we get there though is different. I'd say you have a more broader, long-reaching view on where we can get to. How we get to where we should go than Dominic. I'm a bit more piecemeal about it. Like, I guess compartmentalize the problems and try and deal with them individually, and try and fix it that way. And I think David, since he's fairly new to this, he's still forming his I guess solution, as it were. Although, I mean, he's already seen and identified a lot of the problems before either of us even got involved.
Yep.
So he's already well on his way to coming up with his own solutions. And at that point, we just need to figure out what would be the best way to work. I mean, one of the problems is some people try and do a one-size-fits-all solution. You're never going to get that. But we need to get something which will work in general and allow people who it won't necessarily serve the best can still actually go about and do their own thing as well.
I think so. I mean, like you said, sometimes it's better to take a step back and observe for a little while than it is to go in with your, gung ho, as they say, with your
To
own
a
kind of
point,
way
yeah.
that that you want to change the world, kind of thing. But yeah, I think for me, like, it's definitely important to observe what's going on and then come to your own conclusion before you make up a solution to that conclusion.
I mean, that's true. Like I said, to a point, but you can't let. Sometimes you do have to get to the point where you have to do something instead of just sitting back and getting the information. So I mean, you're never going to get all of the information anyway. So some of it's going to have to be a bit of a leap of faith.
Which is interesting.
You know, like the saying, yeah. I mean, you got to say this. The saying, "Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good." I mean, sometimes you will have to do something which is just good enough because you're never going to be able to get a perfect solution. But some people sit and wait for that perfect opportunity to show up,
And I think,
which might never happen.
yeah, exactly. And procrastination can be detrimental as well, right? So sitting doing nothing all the time, is going to be absolutely no use to anybody. But there has to be a level at what you
It's a mix.
decide.
It's a mix. It's a mix. You've got to. I mean, maybe you have to wait for the best time to
Yeah.
act.
I
But
think
you better make sure you don't miss it because you've been waiting too long.
it's also how much change could you actually influence. Like me as an individual, how much change could I actually influence? I can only do with what I can do with me. At the end of the day, I can't, determine other people's decisions.
And step one is obviously your own community, and that's where it starts with. Because I've spoken to you about like local things, infrastructure and stuff like that. And can you influence? Absolutely. Like your infrastructure is something you can influence.
it's starting an avalanche as well. It's like you're just one little pebble, but if you do it right, you can turn
Yeah,
your one little pebble into a giant landslide coming
exactly.
down
That's
And
what I'm
upon you,
doing.
that's
which
about
is
building the
unstoppable.
right. That's about building the right network of people as well, which some people struggle with to network people.
Not necessarily a network. You just got to get people thinking about it. And if someone sees you doing a thing and the effect it has, they might do it. It's like they're not part of your network, but it still
Yeah,
influences them in
no,
some way.
I think, but to a
A
degree,
network can, yeah, a network can help with that, but it's not
yeah.
necessarily the be all end all of it.
Well, what I mean by that is actually being able to articulate your thoughts on a certain thing. Some people struggle with that as well.
You've
I
massively
Or,
improved on
you know
it,
what I mean?
Dave. Like in the past
I
7
am
months,
terrible at that.
you've become very good at better articulating your opinions. Like it's also about practice, right? Like even for me, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
very good at writing things, but even when I did the English test, like my writing is way better than my speaking. Like I did the TOEFL the IBT test, that is the English test, right? I got a 25 on speaking, but I got a 30 on writing. 30 out of 30.
right.
Like,
Wow.
it's just I'm way better at writing than I am at speaking. That's just reality, right? And that takes
Yeah,
what I just said, right? Like all these archetypes that I just mentioned, and when I said combination, you cannot have mastery without actually putting the effort in. Like a lot
yeah.
of
Of course,
people think
you need
that,
to practice everything.
yeah, a lot of people think that people just magically are good at something. Well, there's definitely talent involved, but behind the talent, there's hard work.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
even if you're talented at something, you can still improve at it.
Yeah.
yeah,
You-
exactly.
you're not automatically number one just because you got a natural
Yeah,
talent. I mean, look, like I keep bringing him up, but Hussein Bolt, the dude's a talented runner, but do you think he won the Olympics, gold medals just by being talented?
no.
You've got to do it. It means with talent, it means you don't have to work as much, but you still have to put
Yeah.
some in.
Yeah.
Also the thing is you need to obviously practice what you've learned as well, because it's like the guitar. Say, if I don't pick up the guitar for, say, 6 months, I'm going to lose all that. Not all of it, but I'm going to lose a fair majority of the music that I've learned in that
Well,
time. Because
you're gonna be a bit
yeah,
rusty.
muscle memory will disappear eventually. And you need
No, it
to
doesn't disappear.
relearn it, kind of thing. It doesn't
It
disappear,
well,
but you
like I
need
say,
to relearn it
Yeah,
to a
that
yeah,
degree.
like I say, that's where the stuff to be like you've got the muscle memory, it'll come back to you. It's like this way, you never really forget how to ride a bike, so
yeah.
it'll come back to you, but you'll be you'll learn faster than someone who's doing it just from scratch. You do have to, I guess, for lack of a better word, there's a bit of a relearning period, um while
Yeah,
while
adjustment
you get
period.
back in the saddle, as it were.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But when it
Um,
comes to all
I
of
mean,
this, bring it
yeah,
all back.
What?
Like when it comes to all of this, that's kind of like where we are as a nation. Like sometimes I push buttons just to see reactions. Like when it comes to my own philosophy, I'm on the board of Kierkegaard's leap of faith, Taoism, just letting the river flow. That's kind of where I am. You need some rules, but not a lot of rules. Sometimes I just talk to people and
That isn't that the banks of the river, the rules and the rules and the guidelines.
yeah, just the
But
basic
that but
guidelines of how,
yeah, but the river flows between them quite naturally, doesn't it?
yeah. So the motto of my country is "Ik zal handhaven," which quite literally means "I will maintain, I will steward," which is something obviously Confucianism itself is prime example of what that means. But it means maintaining the country and looking backwards to what was bad and improving on the things that were good. That doesn't mean guilt tripping me into Narnia. Like I don't know why we're still talking about slavery as if we didn't massively pay back, and we literally had people die over it. Like how many people at the bottom
well,
of
well, 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 yeah, we literally, like me and David literally paid reparations for slavery as well, because we had the slave tax.
yeah?
Do you know about that?
I know, yeah, you told me before.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
also
we did. Okay.
mean
Well,
you paid
we
in
had
blood.
that. Yeah.
That's much more extreme. You paid in blood.
Oh
But
yeah.
the
Yeah.
slave trade,
We paid in all the ways. Yeah.
the slave trade for what we did was the shortest slave trade in the history of humanity. Yet we're getting all the blame just because we
And
decided.
and it's still going on.
Yeah, but just because we decided, like, it's a question, you give them an age to take them out, all these activists, because they will go all the way just to get
Yeah.
some degree of attention, right? These are people that they want a partner that reacts towards their virtue signaling. But like I already explained, white knights tend to be the ones that end up the incel.
It's
Yeah.
it's why you don't apologize to these people, because that is your capitulation, and you will always be under their thumb. After
Yeah,
that.
well, you see it as well, right? Currently, in current stage of internet, anyone that is on that side of the spectrum, if you do anything bad, they will devour you. They are just
yeah,
looking
it's
for
like
that
you
one
can-
thing.
Well, yeah, no, it's the purity spiral. It's like look at J.K. Rowling.
Yep.
By most metrics, she is a leftist, but she went out of lockstep on the one issue about trans people, like slightly out of lockstep on it, and now she's like the British Hitler
Yep.
to these people. It's like you only have to be the slightest bit out of sync, and you will be excommunicated from their religion.
Can I just point out
Yeah, well,
that
that's
this whole
cancel
ideology,
culture.
if you think about communism, what always happens if you step slightly out of line? You get sent to a re-education camp.
Cancelled.
Or a gulag. Or
Same thing.
you just get
The
disappeared.
gulag is a re-education camp.
I thought you were just locked in there forever.
I mean, it's hard to brainwash you, you know? So
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
you can, because if you think about what's happening with China, right? Those re-education camps have been going on for a few decades now. They're not really succeeding, are they?
Mm,
Just pointing it out.
nah, I don't think so.
Don't let the CCPR come after me, please. But that's what I mean. Like, if you think about everything, like, there are extremes, and when it comes to the extreme left, they will get into communistic phases, which is worse than the extreme right. And the extreme right is also very destructive, and I mean, both sides bad.
Well, it's an
Yeah.
extreme.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly.
that's right. You want to have. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go into the golden mean fallacy, but usually there is a sort of non-extreme middle ground too. So the best thing to do is find something that is a decent balance. And when I say balance, I don't mean a 50-50. I don't mean like right in the middle. But something that both sides, or well, as many sides as there are, can find acceptable.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by my book, We Stand on the Shoulders of Titans, Amnesia.